This short video is about starting ArcGIS Pro the first time and working on Lab 1, Part 1. You'll notice that all the data for each lab, and this is true for all the labs in the class, is copied from the share drive, one of the class-protected share drives, to the desktop of the computer you're working on. You work on that desktop. That's where you save all the data, your work, and then once everything is saved and ArcGIS is closed, then you copy that working directory back to a safekeeping place, your W or your H, one of your share drives, so you can keep it. And then you'd repeat that process for future use. So you could bring it back from your W or H back to the desktop, do your work. So everything you're doing is working on the desktop. Why? Because ArcGIS will crash if you're working directly on local share drives. It just is too slow. Now, here's what I'm going to show you how I'm doing it. I'm going to one of the class share drives, and the class has several share drives. Once you're in Citrix, you'll see that there's several different drives that are available to you. The H and the L and the W and the S. Okay, the L and the S are the share drives for the class, and the S is a little faster than the L, but I'll use the L just for example. These are protected drives where you could go in and get the class data. So I'm going to copy that entire folder for Lab 1, and I'm going to paste that onto the desktop. So I'm pasting it onto the desktop. Now I've pasted it onto the desktop, so I can close the File Explorer, and I'm going to then start ArcGIS Pro. All right, so I'm starting ArcGIS Pro, and the first time you start ArcGIS Pro during the day after you're going to have to authenticate yourself with it. So you'll always have to click on the X500, and you'll have to put in your internet ID, and you sign in, and you'll have to do your Duo. And you do your Duo, so you have to go through that process each time to authenticate, to get your license. Now, ArcGIS Pro starts up. Okay, and when you're in ArcGIS Pro, it's very important, you do this every time, you're going to start a new map, and this map you're not going to want to be putting in this project. So you're going to want to name it something logical, something like Lab 1, Part 1, or something of that. And you're going to want to use the little yellow folder off to the side, and you're going to want to go over to the computer, okay, on this PC. In this PC on the desktop, there's your Lab 1 folder, and you make sure that you're working in this Lab 1 folder. So then you say OK, and then ArcGIS starts up. Now when ArcGIS starts up, you'll see a couple of base maps. You can turn these off, I generally remove them, but they really don't hurt anything. They're just background information that comes up automatically with every map. Now, ArcGIS, and this is explained in the instructions, has menus at the top, and as you move along on these, the ribbons change. You'll notice the bottom information here is changing as I'm clicking on the top. So this is called a ribbon, okay? And most of the time we're working on the map or the insert or the edit or the share menu, but the ribbon, and you get the basic idea. Over here are some pin toolbars that we've set up, and if you can turn these on with the view. You can turn these various different options on over on the side, and some of these things can be put in different places. You could put them below or beside. They're dockable, but basically, as you follow the instructions in the map on the Lab 1 for Lab 1 instructions, we're going to be adding data from map. And the plus, add data. And what we add for the first one are the roads and the lakes. Okay, we'll add those for our very first. Okay, and they show up on your map. Now you can turn these on and off with the little checkbox. You could change the order in which they're in. You can get an idea, move them around. This is your basic map. Okay, now what we teach in the class, instructions, as you read the instructions, we're going to change the colors of these. Okay. And how something is displayed is called symbology. So I'm going to select one of them. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to go down to Symbology. It brings up the Symbology tab. Now this little window over on the side, I can pin off to the side so that it's off. Okay, I've got off to the side. You can see I pinned it. I can bring it back by clicking on it. And here I want to, I've got options here. This is just a single symbol, and I'm going to display this symbol as, say, a major road or a highway, a ramp. I can select, you know, the symbol of that, the way this looks, and I'm going to pin this symbology aside again, okay, with a little pin. I'm going to go over to the lakes and change the lakes to be lakes. Now I can do that with symbology. Go over to symbology, or you can also click on the little patch, okay, which brings up the colors also. Okay, so I'm going to select water for that out of the symbology. So now I've got the lakes and the roads symbolized the way I want them. Now the next step, as the instructions say, is that we're going to insert, with the Insert tab, we're going to insert a new layout or a piece of paper for us to put our map on. Okay, and I'm going to select that map. I'm going to say do a landscape. I can do landscape or portrait. It doesn't matter. It gives me a blank piece of paper. Okay, now this blank piece of paper I have to put my map on. And how you do that is with the little drop down by the map frame. You grab your map and you drag your map out onto the piece of paper. Okay, so now you just review. You've got a map that you've worked on where you do your work on the map, your operations on the map, and here's the piece of paper that you're preparing for the PDF to actually export that or share that, print that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put the various different pieces on that are required as per the instructions. And what we have to do on every map has to have a north arrow, scale bar, legend, and some sort of title. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is do north arrow, and I'm going to pick a north arrow that I like. It doesn't really matter which one, and I'm going to draw that in the corner. So I've got north, and the convention in GIS is north is always up. Okay, I'm going to pick the scale bar. I'll pick something different scale bar. I can drag one out here. And the scale bar, we'll talk about changing units and colors later. I'm going to put a legend, and I can put a legend out here. And I'll put a legend, a small little legend. And I can drag this legend with the little box here. You can see I can drag it to where I want it to be. I can also pull the corners to make it bigger. You're getting the idea that there's some flexibility with this. Now I moved my whole map. Okay, so I don't want to do that. Now I can do the undo if I up here, if I want to undo, you know, so I've got the undo option. So I've got a little box here I'm going to put on the map with my legend, and I can show that in the center. I could also, if I wanted to resize this, my map, so I'm resizing my map a little bit. Okay, I'm picking the corner. Oops, I'm picking the corners here. I gotta get the arrow. I can shrink it and move my map to where I want it to be, and then I can take my legend and move it off to the side so it's not overlapping my map. You're getting a little bit of the idea of how this works. Now you can see that I changed the scale of this map by changing the size a little bit. And this is an advanced option that we'll be talking about a little bit later, how we'll be able to zoom in and out. You could do that here by moving out, zoom out a little bit. See what I'm doing? I'm changing the scale a little bit. Say I move out to something simple like this. So and we'll talk about later about how you could do that a little more carefully. But you get the idea. I can change what is displayed within my box. Now I've got to put a title on here, and I'm going to put a title. So I drag a little box, and I'm going to put a title of Lab 1, Part 1, something of that, that nature. And now this particular thing, this particular thing, I have properties of this particular symbol. Okay, so I could select this particular element, and the text for this element, I could be changing the text for this element a little bit. Here's the text, and I could be showing various different the text symbol. I could be picking different symbols for it and changing its appearance. And in this case, I want to change the point size. So I'm going up to, Okay, so you see I changed the point. I'm going to pin this again. So I added the text, that little text box, put it up here. I went up to the element and I selected the text symbol and I picked the size that I wanted. And you could pick color and so on. So now I've got the important things: the title, the north arrow, the legend, the scale bar, and my subject. So now that's what we've done for our first map. Now the important step is that I go to Share. Okay, I go to the Share and the Share tab. Okay, and the Share tab brings up the ribbon, and I'm going to export the layout. And now I'm going to export. I've got choices of what presets, and generally we always want to put out the georeferenced PDF. That's probably the easiest in the PDF. Now this one's going to go to my Lab 1. You can see here's how the name would go. I could change the name if I want to. Change this, and I'll change it as Part 1, Lab 1, something of that, something easy like that. Save, because you'll have to submit this PDF into the Dropbox on Canvas. And we'll be doing several of these maps in each of the labs. So then I hit Export, and now it's going. It went over to where I had sent that, and if I go to File Explorer, I could go to File Explorer for the desktop. I could go to the File Explorer for the desktop in Lab 1, and I could see that in Lab 1, Part 1, I've got my PDF, okay, where that PDF went, that Adobe PDF that I'm going to use, to submit my. So I hope that gives you a little idea how you put the data on the desktop, open things. Now I spelled this wrong. There's a number of things that I did, but you can be a little more careful. The class is not about cartography. I'm grading you on whether you did the work, okay, not whether it's pretty or the colors are nice. But get your money's worth. Spend a little time to make sure everything is nice. So you could go into this particular piece, for example, and we could go in and change this to be actually to spell it right, and something, and make sure everything is correct. And so you get the idea, and I hope that helps. Thank you very much.